Welcome. Welcome you all to another episode of, Mets therapy, folks. Mets therapy losing tonight to the Padres 7-4. 7-4. But the New York Mets losing today in typical fashion. A typical fashion where you have yet again another starting pitcher. Today it's David Peterson. David Peterson didn't do the job. Gave up 6 runs, 6 hits. The big blow came in the 5th to Manny Machado. I mean, you know what? Last night, you saw something new. You saw something different. You saw the piggyback, the tag team, whatever you want to call it. Clay Holmes hands it off to Sean Manaea. I'm like, okay, the Mets, we're learning something. We're learning something. And even after Clay Holmes went, I think he only threw 50-something pitches. The Mets stuck to a plan. They know these guys are starting to get tired around the 4th or 5th inning, right? And if you really analyze it, most of MOB are 5-inning pitchers these days. So, you have David Peterson, who's already thrown about 50 innings more this year than any other year in his entire career. You know that, number one. And then David Peterson is struggling beyond belief. I believe in his last 8 starts, in fact, I got it right here. In his last 8 starts, David Peterson has an ERA of 7.58. So David Peterson is struggling astronomically right now. Astronomically. Peterson was an all-star, was doing very, very well in the beginning of the year. Right now, we're asking a lot. We are asking a lot. In fact, let me scratch that. We're asking a lot just because, you go into the 5th and 6th inning. I mean, that's a little bit ridiculous, but David Peterson, this game struggled. When I listened to Carlos Mendoza in the post game, he said, they asked, what is the problem with Peterson? He said, Peterson's not locating. He's elevating his sinker. He is not mixing up pitches. His slider doesn't have the movement it normally doesn't have. His changeup doesn't look as sharp. And he said this has been the typical problem for the last couple outings. Thus, this is why his ERA is ridiculous. This is why David Peterson is struggling. And this is why today, yet another performance where you give up 6 runs. And that's hard to overcome. You hit 4 homers, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Francisco Álvarez. So the offense was decent. Did we come up clutch? No, we didn't come up clutch. You had an opportunity in the 7th inning, Juan Soto, to tie the game. And then again in the 9th inning, Juan Soto comes up as the tying run. And again, it doesn't come through. Now, I know you look at the Padres bullpen, they got some great arms out there. Great arms. They invested a lot to get that type of bullpen. And those pitchers can all hit 100 miles per hour, as you heard our broadcast team say a billion times. Mason Miller, nice. Estrada, Suarez, all good arms. But the fact of the matter is, where do we lose the game? We lost it in a couple of spots. You got to be able to, David Peterson's got to be able to not walk certain hitters. You put yourself in a bad situation. If you're not locating, if your pitchers aren't sharp, it's going to make your job that much more difficult if you put guys on base. And we started from the very first inning. First pitch or second and third pitch, Fernando Tatis right down the middle. Guy rips a single, right? Rips a single. Okay, you laid one over the plate. All he did was a single. But the next batter to Luis Arraez, this guy's a hit machine. I know that, but he hits singles. So you cannot be afraid to face a Luis Arraez. You can't afraid to be aggressive. You got to attack. You already have Fernando Tatis on base. The goal is to get a ground ball. But no. And again, I saw the sinker was being elevated. He was throwing a couple pitches outside the strike zone. He ends up walking Luis Arraez. And a situation with a leadoff single gets doubly worse when now you walk the second hitter. Luckily, Manny Machado grounds out, but it was a productive ground out because now Luis Arraez and Fernando Tatis Jr. advanced to second and third. Okay, now here you go. You got second and third, and you have 1 out. Now, this is the first play that I have highlighted in my scorecard where I'm like, okay, this is where bad defense rears its ugly head. So you have next batter up, Gavin Sheets. Gavin Sheets hits a line drive. And if you look at this ball he hit the ball about 25 feet into the outfield. Mullins catches the ball, and you have a guy at third base. In 90% of the situations, the guy's not going to tag because the center fielder caught the ball 25 feet off of the infield. But we know, everybody knows, the whole world knows Cedric Mullins has a little bit better than a noodle. In fact, you know what? Let me not even give him that credit. The guy's got a legit noodle in center field. So he throws the ball, and it's already a short, shallow throw, and it's a little league throw. I've seen little leaguers make better throws from that distance. He throws it up the third base line, so even though it's a very short tag up, no play at the plate, easy run score, and right off the bat, the Padres jump out to a 1-0 lead. All right, I was a bit frustrating because that is a legit run. If Tyrone Taylor is your center fielder, the Padres don't score that run, number one. Number two, if David Peterson can attack the hitters, number two, with that walk, that run doesn't score. So these are the type of plays if you want to be a play of team and you want to advance. Again, you don't make situations worse. And number two, hopefully Tyrone Taylor, I check his injury updates every single day. Hopefully he'll be back on the field very, very soon. He has a tight hamstring, so those hammies are a bit tough. So he's an any day guy. Hopefully he comes back any day now. But that really goes to show you with bad defense or mediocre defense kind of does to you. All right, Will, Richard, hopefully you guys are having good nights. I know, Will, you've kind of predicted this the last couple of weeks, and we're on a 2-game winning streak. We're riding high. You got David Peterson going today, and David Peterson, let's make no mistakes, he's supposed to be your stabilizer. He's not an ace, but he's a good pitcher. He's a veteran. He's supposed to be a stabilizing force. Three runs, max 5 or 6 innings pitch. That's supposed to be a performance you get from a veteran a year away from free agency. That's what you're supposed to get. But, in terms of the David Peterson stock, and a lot of people were riding high beginning of this year, I said it. I'm not going to lie. I said, hey, sign the guy, 5-year contract, extend him. This is a guy I like for him to be a long-term Met, no doubt about it. And yes, Richard, he can be shaky at times, but when he's going right, and he's not going right, with my suspicions of the whole situation are quite obvious. In fact, I saw the terminology that Mendoza used. He's not executing his pitches. His pitches don't have the same bite. His sinker is being elevated, and he can't locate. Well, the most common thing for me, and they're trying to fix him as best as possible, but can we just assume the obvious? He's around 170 pitchers pitched in terms of innings. He's never been that high in terms of innings pitched. Again, I'm going to keep saying this. He's pitched 121 innings pitched. That's his maximum. So can he be tired? Can he be fatigued? I don't think that it's out of the realm to think if a guy's in uncharted territory that may be the answer. Now, I know the Mets right now, we don't have many solutions. In fact, the Mets just broke a ridiculous record today. A ridiculous record. For all of you who missed it, Dom Hamill, who came into the game today as a relief option, he became the 46th pitcher that the Mets have used. Apparently, that is an MLB record, and the list is on, I think I saw on Yahoo Sports. Mets set an absurd 46-pitcher MLB record thanks to Dom Hamill, and that just kind of shows you the absurdity or the ineffectiveness of this pitching lab. The Mets have gone through so many pitchers this entire year. It looks a little worse because of some injuries, because we made some trades. So, but bottom line, this is not fantasy baseball. This is not fantasy baseball. The pitching lab has not been a success. I'm looking at this list. Of course, we've had some injury to Griffin Canning. Would have wished he could have been here. Other guys, just did him. AJ Minter, he's on the list as well. So, did Daniel Nunez, Frankie Montas. So some guys have legit injuries, but still, we've broken an MLB record. So, it's beyond just injuries. It's really ineffectiveness. And that's the situation. A lot of our pitchers the entire year have been ultra ineffective. So, I mean, you could blame everybody. You could blame David Stearns. You could blame, pitching coaches. You could blame Carlos Mendoza. Bottom line, it's not working what the Mets are doing. So yesterday, what the Mets did, I thought was, I don't want to say give him the genius status, but I thought that was an ultra smart way to rest your bullpen and not go to your bullpen that has been, I think the bullpen looks a lot worse because they are overused. Number one, I don't think the bullpen is this bad. I don't think Helsley is this bad. Maybe he might be this bad, but I don't think a lot of that bullpen is as bad as it's looked over the last 2 months. But before the fact, they're just overworked. They're really overworked. So I do like the piggyback thing, the Holmes. I like the Mania thing. If they said that those guys, they might reverse in the next start, meaning on Sunday, Mania might be the starter and Holmes might be the piggyback guy. But again, I could definitely see the Mets doing this with Tong, Sanga. They could definitely do this. I think Peterson might need a piggyback. To be honest, I think Peterson might need a piggyback. The first 4 innings, fine. But again, he's tiring just like the rest. And if he's pitched 170 innings, like I said, it's understandable. It is certainly understandable. So, it really is what it is. And again, early on, the Mets, okay, you play a little more crisp defense, you got to have, Peterson not walking guys, that creates extra run opportunities for the Padres. All right. Another thing I like to see Pete Alonso. He's continuing to stay hot. Today, he homered in his 3rd consecutive game. Right off the bat in the first inning, he pops another home run to left center field. I mean, he is really in a zone right now. And it started from a couple games ago when he hit that game-winning 3-run homer. I mean, if you're going to do anything, you need Pete Alonso in the middle of your lineup to get hot, stay hot, carry that through the playoffs. That is certainly a positive. Juan Soto, he's looking like, even though he's made a couple big outs last inning, he comes up, couple men on base. And, I was just hoping there was a big bat to Lindor with a runner on base. Lindor, you give him credit for passing the baton, taking, he took that was a good, he drew a walk. So you give him credit. He drew a walk. And I was just hoping, get Soto up with an opportunity to possibly tie or win the game. That was in the 9th inning. Soto, you could see, and I mentioned this yesterday, Soto has different ways he holds the bat, different ways he positions his feet, and he does this depending on what the count is, what the situation is. When it is a 2-strike count, you notice Juan Soto chokes up about 2 or 3 fingers on the bat, and you also notice that his feet are squared up. Other times, if it's a first strike or a 0-strike count, you'll notice that the front foot of Juan Soto is more pigeon-toed. That, to me, looks like he's going for a home run swing. Can he hit home runs when his feet are squared? Hell yes. But, it looks like he has a power swing, a power stroke, and he has a contact stroke. It's very interesting. Look at his feet. Look at his hands. Different at bats. It's completely different. So I find that very interesting. When it was 2 strikes in the last inning, 9th inning today, he actually choked up and he had the 2 feet squared and he hit a sharp ball. He hit a line drive right back to the pitcher. At that point, obviously, the pitcher was able to knock it down and it was an easy throw over to the first baseman. But, again, we got to be a little more clutch. And it's about having a better performance. And I think regardless of the situation, you get to the 5th inning, take the guy out. I mean, Peterson, in my opinion, probably should have been out, well before you let him throw fifth inning, bases loaded, and he's still throwing to Manny Machado, lefty on righty. I mean, there were many opportunities you could have took him out before that. Leaving him in there, knowing how bad Peterson's been, is egregious. And honestly, that's on Mendoza. That is completely on Mendoza, leaving him in there. It's not like it was the second, not like it was the third inning. But right now, that kind of just shows me that you are really desperate for this guy to get you at least 5, right? That's one thing. Or number 2, which is even worse, you want him to get 5 innings so that he puts himself in position to get a win. And if that's the case, that would just be horrendously bad managing. And that is not what you do. You don't cater to a guy who wants to put himself in position to get a win. If Mendoza does that, and I know he does do that, because there are certain situations where I'm like, why the hell is the guy out there? He's clearly gassed. He's getting pounded. Location is not there, and he's still in the game. He's still in the game. Today was a situation where Mendoza admitted after the game Peterson didn't have it. So if he didn't have it in the first, second, third, or fourth inning, why the hell are you having Peterson face Manny Machado with the bases loaded? So that was a completely, in my position, and sitting from listening to Mendoza, you observe that he's not having it. That's a dumb decision. You don't let him go out there. And obviously he threw a meatball right over the middle of the plate, off-speed pitch, and it was right in Manny Machado's wheelhouse. It wasn't a hard pitch to hit. It wasn't up and in. It didn't have good location, right out over the plate, and it was an easy pitch for Manny Machado to hit a home run on. So not good, not good, not good. Richard, Dom, it's more than that. Explain, Richard, explain. Get my iced tea. And if you're watching this live or replay, hit the like button. Helps the channel grow. So I appreciate that. We like to do these midnight shows, these therapy shows, especially after a loss. I want to try to do a show at least every night until the end of the season. I've set that up with my schedule. The shows might be a little late like tonight, but if you're around at this time, make sure you are subscribed. You set your alerts, because we will be on. And honestly, we're going to take this right up until the offseason. God forbid the Mets don't make it. The only fortunate thing we have right now is that right now the D-backs who were closest to the New York Mets are playing the Giants. Giants won, so you have everybody 2 games behind the New York Mets in terms of the loss column. So you have the Reds, you have the Giants, and you have the D-backs. The D-backs, in my opinion, are the hottest team. They've had it really going the last week, not week and a half, last month. But the fact of the matter is the D-backs have a very tough schedule. Only 9 and 10 games left, but they are playing the Dodgers next. They're playing the Padres, and I believe they're playing the Phillies. So they're playing 3 top contenders. It's going to be tough for the D-backs. That's the team that we don't really have the tiebreaker with. So I don't even want to come in tied with them. We have to legit have a better record than them. I've told you about the guy on X that analyzes swings. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't checked that out. I remember you telling me about Pete Alonso and the wrist and stuff like that. I checked that out at the time, but I haven't looked at that in a while. I really got to check that out. You have any guys on X that analyze why the Mets pitchers have just all of a sudden crapped the bed? In fact, I mean, Mets pitching staff and coaches, I'm pretty sure if you know anybody like that, they would like to know this guy's information, because, it's just really unacceptable. You got Mets breaking an MLB record, 46 pitchers used this entire season. And that really kind of just shows you David Stern's philosophy. And I said this before the season even started. I said this based on last year. David Stearns uses pitchers like fantasy baseball. Fantasy baseball, it doesn't have to be a name guy. You pick up these guys on the waiver wire. You sign a couple of free agents that, obviously don't have a lot of credentials. But the New York Mets, and a lot of these guys were acquired, not a lot of low-level names required, a lot of low-level names that the New York Mets thought they can insert in their pitching lab, insert using their analytics, and turn these guys and utilize them in a way where they could be productive. But the Mets, you got as much credit as you gave them last year. They have been dead wrong the second portion of this season. First 2 months, the Mets were doing great. Griffin Canning, everybody was being maximized, and the other teams were having really trouble. No matter who the Mets threw out there, Clay Holmes, phenomenal early on. Everybody in the first couple months, pitching-wise, was a win, was a success. But just as successful as the Mets pitching was in the first couple months, we have been disastrous. And, just up until yesterday, or the Mets really haven't pivoted. They really haven't pivoted. They could have done this piggyback thing really last month. They could have brought up Nolan McLean, 2 months ago. Everything they've been doing has been waiting way too long. And they asked a question to David Stearns, and they said, David, do you think the advanced or the expanded playoffs has really, let teams take the gas off, the pedal off the gas? Like, other teams really aren't trying as hard because they know that, hey, it's easier to make the playoffs. Like a team like the New York Mets, it always gave me the opinion that, especially Mendoza in the press conference, we got the talent, we got the experience, we just need to get going, we just need to get started. That I felt that they thought that they had the ability to just turn it on, like they were the Yankees of old. Like the Yankees used to cruise during the regular season, and when they needed to turn it on in the playoffs, they had that ability because of their pedigree. I mean, the Mets right now, they made the playoffs last year, but I wouldn't say the Mets have any sort of pedigree, any sort of, consistent, run towards the end. They're fairly, they have a core who's been here for a while, but, the pitching staff this year is completely new. You got 3 rookies right now kind of vying for the starting rotation. And then you got Clay Holmes here for the first time. Peterson, he's been here for a while, but that's really the only guy. Sean Manaea, it's his second year. So the Mets really have proven that they have the ability to do nothing. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating, but that's just an observation that was asked. And David Stearns kind of said, yes, I think that's true. But, teams still have value of getting in those top 2 positions in the playoff standings. What's up, Joseph? You wrote, so they are showing life. That's all we can ask. Joseph, I want to win the World Series. I personally, I'm asking. I'm not asking a lot because it's a $350 million team. I'm asking for consistent play. I'm asking for fundamental play. I'm asking for smart baseball. It seems like today the New York Mets had full knowledge that David Peterson is struggling. Right? It's apparent. The guy in his last 8 starts has an 8 ERA, right? So why was he left in the 5th inning? Number one. And then when he got to a bases loaded situation against Manny Machado, why was he left in the game? At least bring a fresh arm in there, at least bring a fresh arm in there who can at least, throw up and in, have a little more location. It just that was the part of the game that lost it for us. And, it's just no surprise. I mean, that didn't hit us out of left field. That wasn't in the 2nd inning. It wasn't in the 3rd inning. It was in the 5th inning. I was wondering if they were playing possum. Nah, they aren't that good. Yeah, I mean, yesterday you saw when Lindor's wife did the national anthem, the violin thing. I mean, the team came out inspired. I'm not saying it was specifically because of that. Maybe she is a good luck charm, but the bats came out. Lindor came out hot. Pete Alonso, he's starting to heat up. The lineup, up and down the lineup, seemed to flow. And today again, the bats look decent. I mean, we still had more opportunities to add on. Soto came inches short from tying the game in the 7th. And then obviously in the 9th inning, we got a couple runners on against a very good closer. But Soto hit the ball hard. The last at bat, he hit the ball hard, hit it up the middle, hit the pitcher. But that's going to happen against good pitchers like these pitchers that the Padres have. And I give the Padres credit because they built one hell of a bullpen. They really did. The Mets, again, lost it in the 5th inning. Joe, you're right. Yes, that was crushing. Still had chances to come back, which is better than what has been going on in the past. I mean, I agree. If you compare them to like a week and a half ago, and at some points in August, they were just giving at bats away. Remember, a week ago, the Mets had like 30 straight at bats where they were retired in a row. Yeah, you're right. That was horrific. They were lifeless. So, yeah, they tried to battle back. They put themselves in position to potentially tie the game. But those what ifs and, it just didn't happen. So it doesn't really count for much unless, inside, if this is going to motivate them to play better in their last 10 games, then yeah, that might be a good thing because the fact is, and they've been really lucky in the last couple of games, in the last 10 games with 2-8, I believe with 2-8, which is obviously not very good. We had an 8-game losing streak just kind of put in there. In our last 20 games, we're playing really horrific. It's just the last 3 games. I would say last 3 games, the New York Mets, again, like you said, Joseph, have a bit more life. They tried to battle back this game. But, again, if you're going to face the Padres, and this is one of the things that I respect about the Padres is they have that top-rated bullpen. So, being smart and being opportunistic, taking advantage of your chances, the Mets should look a lot better when they have, and I know Álvarez is hitting a lot better. He's actually going to right field. I think Álvarez is a guy at this point. Álvarez can't pull the ball. Number one, Álvarez can't pull the ball. You saw late in the game, Álvarez took a swing on an inside pitch. Wasn't crazy inside. He took a swing, and then he's shaking his hand. Right, rightfully so. So the guy's got a torn ligament and he's got like a broken pinky. So anything inside hard is going to hurt him when he swings. And on the very next pitch, the pitcher threw the ball in the same position, high and in. So Álvarez is a guy that really needs the ball out over the plate. Anything on the inner part of the plate is painful. It's painful for Álvarez to grip the bat tightly and turn on a pitch. So, again, that is another reason why, I can't wait until Torrens comes back. As much as I love Álvarez, and I love Francisco Álvarez. He's one of my favorite players. I love the fact that he wants to be out there. He wants to contribute to this team. But at the end of the day, at bats like that are going to hurt us. At least Torrens, he's going to give you a professional at bat. He's going to fill that right center field gap. He's going to hit those doubles, hit those singles down the right field line. I really love the approach of Luis Torrens, not to mention the guy has an absolute cannon, a cannon behind the plate. And, just because of the fact that he doesn't have injuries to his hands, he can move better behind the plate. You saw there was a couple passed balls on Francisco Álvarez. So, I don't want to kill the kid because the Mets have injuries. And at this point right now, it's almost like we need him, to play hurt. A couple of weeks ago, it was an option. Now, because of injuries, we need to force him. So it's really not that fair. And he did hit that homer, but the majority of Francisco Álvarez exposure is not going to be good right now. And, I'm going to put this comment up there, Joseph, because I kind of feel the same way. I just feel like this team is fighting and could click. And you see those glimpses. You really do. And the lineup, and I've said this the whole year, that the lineup could be a top lineup. And everybody's been saying that the offense could be a top 3, top 2 offense in the league. But then you see what they did in August. And when, the lineup clipped up and down the lineup, when you get Brett Beatty mashing the way Brett Beatty's starting to hit the ball, I mean, hopefully you get Swaggy V, Mark Vientos going. And these are guys hitting the bottom of your lineup. It stinks. Álvarez isn't that option that we thought he could be because of the injuries. But then, the top of the guys going. You got the Soto, Lindor, Alonso. That's one of the best three combinations in all of baseball. That's a top three-player combination. And then when you have the bottom guys like Brett Beatty, McNeil's been hitting, line drives. The only guy who literally gives me zero hope or very little hope, and this is one of the worst trades, is Cedric Mullins. Cedric Mullins defensively has no arm. Range-wise, his range isn't that great. And then at the plate, it looks like almost an automatic out. I know he hit a home run the other day. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. The guy for the majority of this second half has been a counterproductive player, and it hasn't even been close. It really has not been close. And again, catcher and center fielder, those two players, if you have lackluster defenders or bad defenders, that's going to hurt you. That is going to hurt you. And right now, with Alvarez's injuries and Mullins being, in my opinion, not a great center fielder, McNeil, he subs in there certain time, not a great center fielder. When Taylor went out, when Torrens went out, is when, the New York Mets really lost something. So those two guys, getting those two guys back in the next couple of days is going to be beyond huge, in my opinion. Exactly, Joseph. Your last two comments, Tyrone and Torrens. Again, and you win with defense. Offense is nice. It's really nice. But what does defense do? Defense wins championships. But more than that, defense helps your pitchers. Especially struggling pitchers. If your pitchers are struggling because you're throwing extra pitches, the last thing you need is for, a ball in center field to not get caught, Cedric Mullins pulling up on a ball, or, him not getting to a ball in the gap, or his weak arm results in an easy sac fly. And again, whoever didn't see that play in the first inning, number 4 hitter for the Padres hit a very shallow line drive to center field, 25 feet off the infield, and easily, I believe Tatis was at third, easily scored the first run. And right off the bat, that kind of just left a sour taste in my mouth. And I'm like, those are the type of plays in the playoffs we have to make sure, hopefully Taylor's out there. And really, if Taylor's not out there, it's really kind of, what else could you do? The Padres, other teams, they're going to do the homework on the Mets. Oh, Joseph, so Taylor should be back for the Nat series? All right, that's going to be awesome. And then I heard yesterday, I believe Stern said it. He said Torrens is pretty close too. He's doing a couple of rehab assignments, so hopefully Torrens is going to be back very soon too. JL, so just hope we didn't ruin Tong's confidence by calling him up early. Here's the thing. Very, very, very important. First of all, if the guy's anything like we thought he would be, right? We thought the guy would be, a phenom, right? But he's a rookie. Nonetheless, he's a rookie, and rookies naturally will have a good performance, then they'll have a bad performance. Right now, we just threw him in the middle of a pennant race, saying we need you to only be good, right? That's not fair. The guy's only 22 years old, just turned 22 a month ago. So he's a young 22-year-old, and he is not even seasoned in minor leagues. He only pitched 2 starts in AAA. So it's not like he's developed fully. We just were in such a desperate situation. Like I said early in this video, we used 46 pitchers and broke the MLB record. So my long answer to this is, if the guy is anything like we thought he would be, right? He has the talent. He's got the mental makeup. He's going to come back from this. And that's why I think the New York Mets had to give him another start. There were some folks who didn't want to, but I think that would have played mental games with him. So Tong's got another start. The Mets are going to have confidence in him. They're going to put him out there one more time, at least one more time. And I think it is very important for the Mets to do so for his long-term outlook. But I think one start is okay. Let's see how he bounces back. Mendoza, David Stearns, they said the key this kid is going to be a key contributor, and he can be very effective, whether he's out of the bullpen, whether he's a piggyback guy, whether he's a starter. He has a chance to make an impact. And that's what they told the kid. They said, you got great stuff. You wouldn't be here. Right now, we wouldn't have rushed you up here if you weren't special. So, they got to get in the kid's mental, make him feel good about himself, get his confidence up. And, I firmly believe that Jonah Tong is going to be fine. That was just a normal situation. Guy, third outing, that's completely normal. And Joseph, even better point. And I think this is where veterans are huge on teams. Huge. He needs vets to talk to him. He will be fine. I mean, other vets on the team have been there. You could be the best pitcher, Roger Clemens, back in the day. Anybody, Greg Maddux, all-time greats, Pedro Martinez, every single all-time great has been there at one point or another. And especially if you're in your rookie season. And you could see, it really stunk because I was watching that game very, very closely. Of course, he's facing Jacob deGrom. Of course, Jacob deGrom, that's his first time at Citi Field since he left. So it was a very, very big night. You see Jacob deGrom, he's a fan favorite. And that the fans, obviously we don't know much of him. We love him because he's a prospect, but it was very tough. That was a very big ask. I mean, now, Monday morning quarterback, I think it would have probably been wiser because to switch him to another game, I mean, it's big enough that he's pitching down the stretch, but for him to see Jacob deGrom in the other dugout, I mean, it doesn't really help the mental aspect of it for a guy like Jonah Tong. But, it is what it is. Use it as a learning experience and then just move on. Okay, I'm just looking at some of the final numbers for this game. I like to look at situationally. How did the Mets do situationally? So tonight, the Mets went 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. We left 7 men on base. Just in comparison, the Padres went 3 for 12 with running and scoring position, and they left 9 on base. So right then and there, Mets have 5 opportunities with runners in scoring position. Padres have 12 opportunities. So the Mets went 0 for 5, and the Padres had failures too. They just had more opportunities with runners in scoring position. They went 3 for 12, and in fact, they left more runners on base. Mets needed to create a bit more opportunities. Did not. But again, that bullpen is really tough. Peterson today, 5 innings, 6 hits, 6 earned runs, 3 walks, 1 K. 1K. Pivetta didn't do much better. He went 4 2/3, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 0 walks, which is good, 5 Ks. So, he walked nobody, had more strikeouts. But then when the bullpen guys came in, Mason Miller, 0 hits in 1 2/3 innings, and Robert Suarez got his 39th save. He shut the door. So more in context, since September 6th, so this is down the stretch, right? I've been highlighting September for months now. How are the Mets going to play down the stretch? Well, since September 6th, the Mets are 2-9, but, we're still a game and a half. I mean, we're still 2 games up in the lost column to those wild cards teams. So, I mean, that is good. We're playing, not the best ball. We're looking a little better, Joseph, making some points that we're not looking lifeless, a little better at bats, but still we're not at that finished product where we kind of need to be. And again, we got to get more consistent. And just so you know, so the type of pitch that was thrown to Machado was an 81 mile per hour breaking ball right over the middle of the plate, right? So it's not even like he really threw his best pitch, threw an 81 mile per hour breaking ball, sat right over the middle of the plate, and Machado does what he's been doing a lot in his career. He does damage, and obviously that was a big key to losing. And then again, the situational hitting, 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. And then Mason Miller and Suarez slammed the door. And that was really all she wrote. That was really all she wrote. Oh, Starling Marte. I mean, he did hit a solo homer, and I mean, that was just a shot. That was really a shot. Marte's done exactly what you would have wanted a veteran to do. And again, veterans, you not only, you rely on him on the field, like, you're hoping Starling Marte is a guy who could be somewhat of a leader in the clubhouse. Well, if you ask Juan Soto says Starling Marte is the leader on the team. Not that that's controversial or not. And he said that right around the time where everybody was asking, hey, is Francisco Lindor the captain? No, you got Starling Marte there. And I'm not saying Starling Marte is not a leader, but, that's really not what you say when they're asking about Francisco Lindor. And then you're right. Peterson and Senga really have fallen off a cliff. How the mighty have fallen. Yeah, I mean, even Manaya. I mean, we set our starting rotation. Our starters were supposed. I mean, it's really ridiculous when you think about it. You're right. Like the mighty have fallen. Even Senga got off to a great start this year. I mean, our rotation, or the success of our rotation, was really on Senga, Manaya. Peterson was supposed to be a nice 3. Clay Holmes, I kind of had him slotted in as a 3-4 guy, converted from reliever. And then you had Montas in the 5th spot. But your top 3 right now, your top 3, Senga, Manaya, and Peterson, are really kind of, as a starter, not giving you anything down the stretch. And I'm not, when I say not giving you anything, I'm not saying that they're giving you a 4 or 5 ERA. These pitchers are all pitching to over a 6 ERA, all 3 of them. So when you have all 3 of your top 3 guys in your rotation pitching, wow. I mean, like, that seems like it's rare. It really seems like it's rare that these guys that had all decent years last year, all of a sudden just, crap the bed. And I know Senga only pitched 5 innings, but he had a first good 2 months of the season. And I really gotta believe that there's something more wrong with Senga, and they're really not saying it. I'm not saying it's a really big injury, because if it was a really big injury, you probably shut him down. But they asked Senga right before he left, right before he went down to the minors, if he was fully healthy. And he didn't answer that question. It was like a non-answer, like, we're kind of old, dealing with something. And then when Mendoza was asked about when he would be back, despite Senga already having one good start in the minors, he didn't even guarantee, like, oh, he'll be back. You just got to see what his stuff is. So I'm kind of thinking, like, Senga wouldn't give you a better chance than, what you're doing right now, what you're throwing out there right now. So that kind of just, I wonder what's wrong with him. And then I'm just looking up right here. I remember looking up early in the season, or a mid part of the season, his fastball lost 2 miles per hour from last year. I'm just checking exactly what that was. Yeah. So it is last year, his fastball average velocity of the fastball was 95.8. So average fastball velocity was almost 96. And we're talking about last year. And in 2023, is the same thing, 96 miles per hour. This year, His average fastball velocity is 93.7. So he lost more than 2 miles per hour on the fastball. And the thing that really is indicative of something going wrong with Kodai Senga is his control, folks. His control. And I know he's never really been a control guy. If you look at 2023, his base on ball, he was in the 15th percentile. So that's very, very bad. But if you look at his base on balls this year, he's in the 8th percentile. And he's not striking out guys at the same clip. He doesn't have the same chase rate, whip rate. So, I mean, that's going to lead to a lot of guys making better contact. And obviously, if he's not locating, you could just wait for your pitch. And if your stuff isn't as good as it was in the past, if you don't have his lightning of a fastball, and you have batters just waiting and sitting on a pitch because they're in a hitter's count, you're going to have failure over and over and over. All right, well, let's see what you got here. So Marte knows how to keep guys loose, especially the young guys. That makes him and Lindor different type of leaders. And I'm sure that's what Soto is saying. I mean, I don't remember the exact question, but if I remember the context, the question was asked if he thought Lindor was captain material or if he should be the captain of the Mets. And then his answer or response to that was, oh, no, Starling Marte, he should be the captain of the Mets. Now, I got to get the context right, but I thought it was something around those lines. And that's fine. I mean, if you think that he could be the captain, I just wouldn't say it right when the question is being asked, do you think Lindor is captain material? I would have just said, I would have said yes. I mean, you support that aspect. And then another question, oh, yeah, but, also Starling Marte, he's also has those leadership abilities. Nobody's downplaying that. I just felt that was a subtle knock at Francisco Lindor, just like, and I know somebody mentioned this in the comments today, just like early in the season when Juan Soto was struggling and they asked him, hey, Juan, why are you struggling, this and that? And he goes, well, it's a little different hitting in front of, not hitting in front of Aaron Judge. That's all. And this was a time where Pete Alonso was mashing the ball. He was crushing the ball. Why would you say, oh, I'm not as productive because Aaron Judge isn't behind me? Like, you had a guy who was mashing over at that time. I think Alonso was ridiculous. 1,100 OPS, ridiculous. I felt that was a little nudge at a guy like Pete Alonso. So, I'm not saying, Juan Soto's maybe he's doing this unintentionally, but if I'm Pete Alonso and I'm Francisco Lindor, if I'm hearing those two comments, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, he's not uplifting us and not making us feel better by saying, I wish I had Judge. I wish Starling Marte, he's the captain. I don't know. It's just those things. If you're on a team and you're making $800 million and you're making comments like that, I could see how people might be rubbed the wrong way. We're human beings here. That's why, like, a guy like Derek Jeter, I think his best quality was zipping the lip and giving political answers. He didn't say much. He wasn't a very expressive guy, but I'll tell you, when he was on the field and the team was losing, the only focus he had was making sure, you do everything in your power to win. And that's what I haven't seen that focus all the time with the Mets. I've seen the Mets losing in many games, playing unfundamental ball, and I see guys laughing, guys joking around, guys trying to have conversations with the other team. And I'm like, you guys are paying $350 million collective team salary. I want more. The fans deserve more. We deserve max effort all the time. Will, I think this is a fair point. And I see, Jo, you said his mechanics seem off about Senga. I would agree with that. And Will, I know I've said this. Senga hasn't pitched in a full year. This is his first time back. Nobody's bringing up that point. Yeah, he only pitched 5 innings last year. So this is his first full season since 2023. So if he's going to be inconsistent, or if his arm's going to be fatigued or tired because he hasn't pitched a full season in almost 2 years, that's natural. But then again, that's David Stearns' problem, because David Stearns has a whole starting rotation of pitchers who are either haven't pitched, like close to 200 innings, or have had Clay Holmes. He's a converted reliever, only pitched 65 innings. Kodai Senga only pitched 5 innings. So David Peterson only pitched 120 innings. Frankie Montas, an injury-prone guy. I mean, this is a whole rotation filled of a lot of ifs and a lot of question marks. And I'm not surprised that the rotation has simply been gassed. I mean, the only one right now that kind of surprises me is Sean Manaea, because Sean Manaea last year supposedly figured things out, and he was a guy who supposedly was motivated. But then I learned what type of guy Manaea is. And Manaea is a guy that he has to be pushed. He has to be motivated to the nth degree. Last year, he was motivated by the biggest thing you can motivate a guy by. He was motivated by money. He was going out there for the big contract at 32 years old, never been paid that big money. Got, first time ever. You give him credit. He got that 3-year, $75 million contract. And this year, he's looked like a completely different pitcher. Only time I've seen a shade of Manaea that I saw similar to last year was yesterday. When, what did you have to do? You had to take his job away from him. You had to threaten him from possibly making no other starts. And that's what you had to do. And that's what you shouldn't have to do. But yesterday, I'm like, wow, I haven't seen Sean look like this in, months. I haven't seen him look like this since last year. So, if you got to do that, if you got to, dangle him possibly not having a job for him to be productive, it shouldn't be the case. But it kind of just shows you, every pitcher is different, and you got to approach every pitcher, with that respect. Now, again, and David Stearns said this yesterday. He said that the New York Mets haven't been doing a good job at putting our players in a position to win and to get better, right? What are we doing different? And I keep saying this after every single loss, after every single time Manaea says the same old crap. We got the talent, we got the experience, we got to get better. No, what are we doing different? Because what we've been doing hasn't been working. And yesterday, again, was the first time I'm like, okay, and a piggyback, okay, that's interesting. That's different. And it worked. And they stayed kind of 100% on point with that. Even when Clay Holmes could have went out to the 5th inning, he was out of 57 pitches at that time, only allowed 2 runs, could have went out, but they're like, nope, this is the plan. You bring Sean in. He has 5 innings of potential going, and that's it. So I do like that. And who knows? I mean, it could have been very likely that Clay Holmes, blew up in the 5th inning, just like we saw David Peterson do today, just like we saw Clay Peterson. It's late. I'm sorry, folks. Just like we saw Clay Holmes kind of falter so many times in the 5th inning of games in the last couple months. What's up, Jason? Yeah, there we go. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. We got the Mets hype 2:00 in the morning. I like that. I mean, after a loss, this, if the Mets somehow continue to play, I mean, in our last 10 with 2-8, right? If the Mets continue to play this badly and still make the playoff, this is going to be the biggest example of backing into the playoffs. Thank you, D-backs, Giants, Reds. I mean, and I've never respected any of those teams. D-backs making all these trades at the deadline, trade Eugenio Suarez, Merrill Kelly. I mean, if they stayed, with the team they had, or they added on, I think the Mets would have been done. But, that's besides the point. What happened. But at this point right now, currently constituted, you have the D-backs as the hottest team. Giants were hot too. The Reds, I don't know. It's just that the talent behind this, I just not respecting, and rightfully so. The Mets have played terrible, and nobody's grabbing it. Oh, what's up, my man, Chris? Let's see what you got. You always got good stuff, Chris. I'm so done with Peterson, with this Peterson clown. He's not a winning player. He's a fourth or fifth starter. That's all he is. When you do not rely on him, he succeeds. When you bank on him, he stinks. You know what? We're certainly relying on him down the stretch in his last 8 starts. And I said this before, his ERA is 7.58. And then, like you said, in the beginning of the season, when the other starting pitchers were doing good, I mean, we didn't really need him, but it was nice for Peterson to do good. That's when he did good. So I could definitely see that. The unclutch nature of David Peterson is actually why I put the title on the thumbnail. So I 100% agree with that, Chris. My pick to win it all is San Diego. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's your pick. I mean, honestly, the Brewers right now looking pretty good, but my pick in the beginning of the year, was San Diego. I haven't really been looking at it right now in terms of outside the New York Mets situation. But when you look at San Diego, I mean, they got a really good bullpen. That's going to matter. They got some decent starters. And they got some hitters. So, I mean, and they got, a decent defense. So they do have the pieces in place. They certainly have the pieces in place, and they got Iglesias. They got Iglesias, the man, the myth, the legend, Iglesias. So, wow, I'm looking at all of the 46 pitchers that the Mets used. It's kind of ridiculous. And a guy like Tyler McGill, like, really kind of blew a huge opportunity. I mean, the door was blown wide open for Tyler McGill. And, apparently he's injured. I mean, what can you really do? But, this would have been such a huge opportunity for somebody like him who pitched pretty decent in the beginning of the year. He was 5-5 with a 3.95 ERA. And then they asked Mendoza about a week ago, when's Tyler coming back? And they said, well, Tyler's complaining about the same exact pain that he complained about a couple months ago. So apparently a guy like Tyler McGill, season is wasted. So it doesn't look like he's coming back. But again, that has been the issue with all of our pitchers. I mean, there's been issues with everybody. And, I hear, Sean Manaea, he's been struggling. There's rumblings out there that he's got stuff in his elbow. Again, I can't confirm, or kind of like, I don't know. I don't know for sure, but all I know is that I see him out there. So then I see him the other night, and he looks like more like the Manaea of last year. So that people saying, oh, he has to have something wrong with his elbow. Really not true. I think a guy like Manaea is just all really mental and motivation and confidence. And then, all right, the coaches got to figure out, how do we motivate these guys so that they can produce at a high level? Well, you're right. Soto has more fun with Marte. He hangs out with the younger guys. So that's who they see as a leader. Yeah, I mean, everybody's, there is, that thing. You do actually make a good point because a lot of people look at MLB players as the same, right? But you don't realize that Soto's 26, Marte is 36. So yeah, there is that really, veteran presence that he sees more in Marte, and Lindor is kind of in the middle. Lindor's 31, so maybe he sees Marte as the wiser, older player, and maybe that's why he refers to him more as the captain, and maybe Lindor is more on his level. I mean, that's really analyzing the mental part of somebody's psyche, but that's interesting. Okay, so this is gonna be the biggest part of the off. I mean, it feels like this is the biggest part of every off season. What the hell are the Mets gonna do with the polar bear? Stearns is a penny pincher. I don't see Stearns giving him the bag. He deserves his flowers. I'll certainly say this down the stretch, and even this whole season, Pete Alonso has done a lot better than I thought he was going to do. He's been clutch with runners in scoring position. He's got a 270 average. I mean, this was a guy hitting 240 for two, even two last year was even worse than that. So, give him a lot more respect. He's hitting a lot more for average. He's actually, he's going the other way. He's going oppo. He's not trying to pull things. So he's being very smart at the plate, a lot more discipline, not swinging at the slider 2 feet outside of the strike zone. So you give him all the credit in the world. He has really done a much better job than last year. But I think there's going to be a similar issue to what happened in the last offseason. You're going to have a guy looking for a long-term contract who's he's going to be 31 years old now in his next season. I think the Mets possibly would entertain the year-to-year thing, but that's not the security that Pete Alonso is looking for. So I think that's going to be the friction. Also, the other friction is this team right now, if you give Alonso around $30 million and you don't make any trades, like you don't trade Nimmo, you don't trade Lindor, you don't trade Soto, so you still have your high salary players on there, and then you have all your regular arbitration contracts like the Vientoses, the Beatties. You have all those guys get their arbitration money. Nobody's gonna kill you, and you have Edwin Diaz come back too. He's gonna opt in for around $20 million. You're at $300 million. You're at $300 million right now, and you made no changes. You made no acquisitions to your pitchers. So that's where the Mets stand. So financially, if the Mets don't sign Alonso, they have a little more leeway to possibly add another pitcher. But I guess they got to see, where is that investment worth it? If the Mets don't make the playoffs this year with Alonso, I could see them saying, hey, you know what? We got to go in a different direction. Even with Alonso having a ridiculously good offensive year, we still didn't make the playoffs. And he's only getting older, and he wants a 4 or 5 year long-term commitment. So I could see a guy like David Stearns saying, it's not going to be financially worth it, and we're going to be signing him for potentially the downside of his career. I mean, do I want to see him? I love my homegrown players, and I do appreciate the fact that he has been clutch this year, and he has been good. But it's going to be a very tough decision over the offseason. But again, we've been seeing that over the last couple of off seasons. So no surprise. Sproat's looking fantastic, better than advertised. I can't believe Mendoza took him out after 70 pitches. Yeah. Sproat, you compare Sproat to a guy like Tong, right? And you compare him to a guy like Nolan McLean. And you can clearly see, like, Nolan McLean, guy's developed, got the mental makeup, he's got the talent, got the stuff. I mean, there's so many different aspects to making a successful major league pitcher. And you want to make sure that you've tweaked their tools, you've made them into the best pitcher possible so that they can have the most confidence and be the most effective. Tong, unfortunately, guy's got the stuff. It's just that the development wasn't there. Sproat's a guy who has had the development. He really has. He's very similar to a guy like Nolan McLean. The thing is, maybe Nolan McLean has a couple more pitches in his repertoire that are elite. But Sproat, I don't want to sleep on this guy because this guy's got pretty nice stuff, and he also has a decent mental makeup. I like his body language on the mound. Guy looks very confident. Guy looks like a very competent pitcher. Hopefully he could be that, X factor. And I've said that the last couple of shows that I do believe that Sproat can be the X factor. And maybe the next step, his next start is to make him go 85. I'm pretty sure they do have a plan for him. But you're right. Sometimes it doesn't feel right, taking a guy out when he's on a roll. And Chris, another good question. How many times have Juan Soto come up within inches of a big homer, 3-run homer versus Phillies, and game-tying home run on David Wright Day? It's incredible. I mean, I'm still waiting for Juan Soto to have that magic Mets moment. I was hoping it could possibly come in the 7th, but I was really possibly hoping that it could come in the 9th. That would have been even bigger. He came up with 2 men, on base. He came up as the tying run. It was 7-4. Facing the closer of the Padres. And, he hit the ball sharply. He hit it right up at the middle. But again, it's not coming through. It doesn't matter how hard you hit it. Hopefully maybe he's saving it for a very big moment. He's a guy that changes his stance. He changes his positioning on the bat. He changes his foot placement depending on what situation it is in the game. So, he's a very interesting batter. I got to say, as much as he's kind of failed when I wanted him to succeed or we wanted him to succeed, I mean, he's had an overall very, very, very good season. 30 plus stolen bases, 110 plus runs scored, going to get to 100 RBIs, 40 plus homers. Defensively, he hasn't been worse than any other year. So, I mean, you got to say, Juan Soto, in my opinion, you're going to want to expect more for $800 million. But, he certainly hasn't been bad. He's been a very good, solid player. And the thing is, like Soto, even without hitting those 3-run homers, grand slams, majority of his shots have been single, solo, and 2-run homers. Still, still going to get to 100 RBIs, still ridiculous numbers. And then Will, you wrote, I'm not giving a Pete a 5-year deal. It would be with a few team options. Yeah, I think that's the way, if you're going to sign him, it's going to be similar type of contract. You're going to give him a 1-year guarantee, and then you're going to give him an option. Or you give him 2 years of decent, solid money and a 3rd-year option. It's going to have to be short-term. And then also, too, how are Pete's motivation? How is he motivated? I know the guy that I see on TV, but the inner workings, is he a guy like Sean Manaea that needs to be motivated, right? Because some guys, you give them those long-term contracts and all of a sudden, they become a different player, and this is why, certain people, were getting on Juan Soto last week. And they were saying he's just trying to get to 35, 40 steals. He's just trying to tally up his home run total. He doesn't care about the Mets. First of all, if Juan Soto does good, that helps the Mets. And that's number one. Number two, the guy's not resting on his laurels. He wants to have the best numbers and he wants to be the most productive as he can. I mean, other guys get paid $300-400 million, and all of a sudden they just don't care anymore. So the fact that this guy still gives a damn and he cares, I mean, that's what I want. That is 100% what I want. Chris, you're right. I think Benj is going to be a terrific player. The same with Williams. I think the Mets need to add another big bat and mix this lineup up a bit. Plus, they clearly need a legit frontline starter. Okay. Yeah, you made a couple good points. Like Carson Benj, I really think the kid has a great future with the Mets. He won the offensive player of the system, best offensive player in the Mets system. Jonah Tong won the award for the best Mets pitcher in the Mets system. So congratulations to both Carson Benj and Jonah Tong. They both had phenomenal years in the minor leagues respectively. And Elian Soto, he won actually off his level. He won an award as well. So not Elian Soto, Elian Pena. He did really good as well. But you know what? You're right. I think there's going to be a change. I mean, we failed many times in the past. I think I'm worried about the defense. Even Lindor's been shaky at times, but like, look at the outfield defense, folks. If Tyler Taylor is not out there, we have one of the worst offense. I'm sorry, we have one of the worst outfields in baseball. If Tyrone Taylor is not out there, right? So you have Soto, you know what his flaws are, you know what his strengths are. Defense is not a strength, right? His arm is okay. But when you have Cedric Mullins and you have Brandon Nimmo and Juan Soto out there, that is one of the worst defenses in all of baseball. Bottom line, all don't have good range, all have mediocre arms, and all have, a bunch of deficiencies out there. So that's a big problem, folks. Then at third base, it would have been nice if Ronnie Mauricio could be better offensively, right? But if you don't have that, then you're stuck with Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty, right? And, Brett Beatty at second base, just for me, I'm not sure. I didn't analyze the defensive metrics on him at second, but I just love the fact that if I could plug him in at second base and he can produce at the offensive level that he potentially can, and then I can have another guy at third base produce even more, I would feel better. But is that where Jet Williams comes in? Maybe, if you keep Brett Beatty at third, Jet Williams at second. So I agree with that. Jet Williams, he might be a second baseman. He profiles probably more as a second baseman than, and then you would have to put Brett Beatty at third. Okay. But I agree. You need to shake things up. You certainly need to shake things up. You certainly need to fix the outfield defense. Behind the plate, you got to make sure Álvarez, get this kid healthy. Healthy. I like Torrens. I like that duo. First base, that's going to be the answer. Are you going to sign Pete, or are you going to go with Vientos at first, or are you going to sign somebody else? But again, you got to address the outfield defense. You got to address, your defense as a whole, because you're not going to win with a bad defense. And that's not going to help out your young pitching too. See, I'm not paying attention to how much the bullpen was used in terms of the Padres bullpen. I just know that they got great arms out there. But again, Cease hasn't been good. I 100% agree with that. Jump on Cease early and often. Soto is one of those guys that's going to hit 350, 350 as he gets older. His homers will come down, but his batting average will be higher than ever. Could be. I mean, he's a guy, like I said, he can do different things at the plate. He can hit for average. He can hit for power. It could be. I mean, power is usually a thing that doesn't go away with players. Usually that's the last thing that goes away. And what Juan Soto's kind of showing you is the last couple of years that this guy is a legit power hitter. Hit 41 home runs last year. This year, 41 home runs at Citi Field. I mean, he's only 26. He's only 26. So, I mean, I'm kind of looking at 40 home runs as being a floor for Juan Soto. And then he's also shown you that not only can he hit home runs, he also has the speed element in his game, scoring over 110 runs and having over 30 stolen bases. I mean, Juan Soto, he's a hell of a ball player. And, again, I know he's got those defensive deficiencies, but we all knew that before he signed that massive contract. And I could definitely see this. Soto can be an all-around beast for 2026. Be the first Mets MVP. The thing is, it just seemed like you got to get over the beast of Ohtani. Like Ohtani, if he has a decent season. I mean, and I think that if the numbers are close, right? If Ohtani and Soto's numbers are close, you got to give it to Soto, because Ohtani, he's not playing defense. So, I mean, like, I'm very reluctant, and I know he won it as a DH, but I just don't like giving the award to DH. Crispy, what's going on? Jumping out here over 2:00 in the morning. I like that. The biggest problem today was David Peterson. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I've been saying that all day. He's a shell of the pitcher he was all of last year and the first half of this year. 3.98 ERA from the year now. Now, not cutting it, can't give up 6 runs. I mean, 100% right. I mean, like the first thing we said is the last 8 starts, the guy has over almost an 8 ERA. So, I mean, David Peterson certainly, one of the guys that you would consider as, a month ago, one of the important pieces down the stretch. This is a guy you need to be solid, but, this is indicative of why the Mets have struggled so mightily over the last month and a half. Your top 3 pitchers in the rotation have been absolute crap. From Mania to Senga to Peterson, absolute crap. You had to jettison Nolan McLean up here and save the day. And, literally, Nolan McLean has saved the day. If you don't have Nolan McLean and you have another crappy pitcher in for those particular starts, the New York Mets aren't even in a playoff spot right now. And, this is another great point, Crispy. I don't want to hear Mets fans ever rag on Juan Soto. 41 home runs, 99 RBIs, 32 stolen bases, 920 OPS, 400 OBP, leads the league in walks. His OPS plus is over 160. I mean, really kind of how can you? How can you? I mean, and the guy's shown you how versatile he can be. Hey, stolen bases, I could steal over 30 if I want to. Driving runs in. If you want it, if Juan Soto wanted to, mark my word, the guy has drawn the most walks in the NL, right? I think Major League Baseball, but at the NL, the guy's always the top in walks, right? So he's been very, very patient, not swinging at pitchers that he probably should be swinging. So the guy has the opportunity to be much more aggressive. If Juan Soto wanted to, he can hit over 50 home runs. He's shown you he can have over 30 stolen bases. I mean, Juan Soto is such an elite player. He can do whatever he needs to do to be a winning player. Last season, everyone was in love with Soto. He could do no wrong. As a Mets, he's been ridiculed. Yankee fans now say Yankee fans are going to say whatever they want to say to make themselves feel better. That's the bottom line. Anything to put the Mets down, and that's every fan base. Every fan base is going to say Soto sucks. The Mets are garbage. They're perennial losers. I mean, that's what other fans need to say to make themselves feel better about their respective teams. I mean, I'm trying my best to respect every team. I'm just trying, Padres, great. I'm trying to respect the opponent, but there are a lot of fans, they just don't have that ability. They only see the lens through their particular set of eyes, and that's just fine. I mean, that's how you do it. But Juan Soto's a great player, and if they're not able to see that, that's just ultra biased and kind of just shows you where you're coming from. Soto in the top 5 in practically every offensive statistic. And then if you pull up Baseball Savant, Soto's numbers aren't even doing him justice. I think, actually, his, let me see. His Baseball Savant, everything's in the 99th and 98th percentile. I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay, so first example, his batting average, folks, is 261. Soto hits the ball hard, right? He's had a lot of tough luck. His expected batting average, according to Baseball Savant, is in the 97th percentile. And his expected batting average, based on how hard he hits the ball, is 298. So Baseball Savant has Juan Soto as a 300 hitter. Had some tough luck. Expected WOBA, 100th percentile. Expected slug, 99th percentile. Average exit velocity, 98th percentile. Barrel percentage, 97th percentile. Hard hit rate, 97th percentile. Squared up percentage, 94th percentile. Chase percentage, 100th percentile. base on ball percentage, 100 percentile. I mean, he is elite in a lot of categories, folks. So Juan Soto is a guy you really can't get on. And for people who say, oh, you can't do this defensively, you can't do that, we already knew that. We already knew his defensive struggles. What's up, Big Pomp? Peterson, yeah, Peterson. He's been the big goat tonight, the big goat. But also too, I'm not gonna let Mendoza off the hook. What Mendoza said in the post-game press conference after the game, he said that Peterson didn't have his stuff today. He said Peterson wasn't locating his sinker. Peterson's location wasn't there. His slider didn't look like it had enough bite on him. So why the hell, if you've already made that assessment and you know that he's been bad the last 8 starts, he has almost an 8 ERA, and he's not good this start, why would you let him face Manny Machado with the bases loaded? So not good on Peterson, but not good on Mendoza as well. Yep, Arizona has a brutal schedule. Oh my God, I've been saying that for literally weeks now. Arizona's schedule down the stretch is ridiculous. I think they got the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Padres. Dodgers, Phillies, Padres. So it's fine. It's fine right now. You got the Giants, and that's good too because the D-backs, I don't see them winning a lot more games. The Giants, we got a 2-game lead in the loss column, and you have the tiebreaker on them. And then the Reds, I think they're the weakest opponent. All right, Crispy, I'm gonna read some of your comments. Call me crazy, but I still think the Mets will make the playoffs. We own the tiebreaker on the Giants. All right, so they are basically 3 back with 10 to play. I don't see the Reds holding up. All right, so me and you are. I didn't even see your comment, but me and you are pretty much in agreement with that. But here's the thing: I think the Mets are going to be able to back themselves in the playoffs. I really do. The Mets since September 6th. I mean, way before. I mean, the Mets have been playing bad for a long time. But down the stretch, when you thought that they were going to play a lot better, last 10 games with 2-8, and we still got a multiple game lead. Kind of just shows you the crap teams that we have behind us. But again, I think it's going to be the biggest definition of backing into the playoffs. But that shouldn't really get us down. It really shouldn't, because it'll only get me down if we get knocked out in the first round. But we have an opportunity. Once we get in, we have an opportunity to shock the world. And that's going to be the model. Let's shock the world. I don't give a damn about what happened since June. I don't give a damn. Whoever's in the game. We got Nolan McClain. Whoever is in the game, and it's all hands on deck. I don't care about anybody's feelings. If Peterson's struggling in the second inning, get him out. You have a short wild card series, and it's going to be all hands on deck. And that's why I could see us, just by sheer virtue of us having so many damn starters, we should be in a pretty decent position. Okay. So I wanted to look up Mendoza's quote on why he left David Peterson in the game. So it was asked on him, why did you leave Peterson in the game to face Machado with the bases loaded? Then Mendoza's answer to this, in my opinion, is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And I just looked up this quote, so I hope it's wrong. But his answer was, we've got to get Peterson back on track. If that was his answer, and it's, I just looked up the quote, and that was his answer to that specific question, that is unacceptable. He's had the whole game to get on track, and he was struggling at that point. So for you to leave him in for a confidence boost, he just did not have it. Just did not have it. I mean, that's what worries me. That's what worries me. If Mendoza's thinking about the feelings of the players at that pivotal point in the game, you are just screwing everybody else on the field. I don't care about you, Lindor. I don't care about you, Soto. I don't care about you, Vientos. I don't care about you, Beatty. I just care about Peterson. Peterson had his moment to feel good, forcing him and hoping and praying he can get Manny Machado out with the bases loaded is not a strategy. That is a strategy to lose. So again, I mean, I'm hoping that quote was wrong. That can never be your answer for why did I leave him in. And then also, too, the part of the interview of the postgame that I heard, he was saying how Peterson did not have it this game. So, wow, that is not good. Chris, you wrote, I don't understand Stearns and how he handles player movement. He is so quick to bring in these bums. And again, that's kind of what I've been saying. I said he sees himself as a fantasy baseball GM. I mean, every day. I mean, you're right. You're 100% right. He does go through a crap load of players. Again, 46 pitchers used this MLB season. That is an MLB record, But Stearns has a lot of looking in the mirror to do. I'll tell you that. I made a lot of videos about Carlos Mendoza, and that's because we're in season, and a lot of the in-game decisions, you reflects on the manager. There's a lot of blame to go around. And David Stearns, while he's looking at what went wrong in front of him, again, got to look in the mirror as well. Got to look in the mirror. And it's going to continue to, when it's, you look at the pitching, right? And I know there were a couple of people who kind of messaged me and they said that, I forgot what the name was, but they said that we really need to add a couple like really good veteran starters for next year. Doesn't have to be a Framber Valdez, doesn't have to be Dylan Cease, although he's struggled, but has to be a very good pitcher, like a Merrill Kelly, or somebody who's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. But we need those stabilizers. And those stabilizing pitchers, they'll probably cost you between 15 to 20 mil. I mean, still, Frankie Montas got 17 mil. So, I mean, that's still a ridiculous contract. But so it was asked of David Stearns, are you going to add veteran righties, veteran pitchers to the rotation next year? And Stearns continued to double down on the fact that, that kind of just shows you that we need to continue to develop our pitchers. And he used the term that we need to do this with some type of abundance. So, basically accentuating the point that, hey, we're only adding pitchers, or most of our pitchers are going to be from within. And that's the Stearns philosophy. Doesn't believe in adding pitchers from outside the organization. Like, the Yankees, they made their big Max Fried pickup. The Yankees have made a lot of kind of pickups, from the free agency, Garrett Cole, this and that. That's not the strategy of David Stearns. It's not. People wanted Corbin Burns last year, Dylan Cease. That's not the strategy of David Stearns. And, do I necessarily agree with that? I want a guy that, could be that veteran presence, can help Nolan McLean develop Is David Peterson the guy to go to? And I think that's, what you got to look at as well. Like, hey, if I sign a guy, don't sign a Verlander, don't sign a Scherzer who's almost 40 years old. But if you got to sign a guy 28, 29 who has decent upside, who, could project good over the next 4 or 5 years, that's not necessarily a bad investment if it's the right guy, and then you look at how they can potentially help out all of your crop of young pitchers. Like, it can't, in my opinion, it can't all be young pitchers, right? It can. I mean, most of the pitchers can be young, but I just don't really see the effectiveness, at least, next year, early on, big spots, if you only have young pitchers, on the team. It's good to have a lot of them, but to only have them. So maybe it's just, a misdirection by David Stearns by saying, hey, we're going to just kind of focus on that. But, again, we need to be a little more accurate in the money. And I know it's got to hurt David Stearns because, the confidence that he had in signing Manaea and signing Frankie Montas, David Stearns, like a lot of GMs, like a lot of presidents, they have egos. And this year has been an utter failure of signing those veteran pitchers. And, Big Palm, this is actually a very, very, very good point, too. Very good point. And I remember in March, everybody was a lot of people were calling because we had injuries to our staff. I know we had a couple key injuries. Everybody was saying, okay, it's goes without saying, we're gonna sign a veteran like Jose Quintana. And I was actually saying, you know what? He's a guy, he's going to eat up. Last year, he ate up 170 innings. He pitched good down the stretch. He pitched pretty decent in the playoffs, except against Dodgers. He did not pitch good again. But, that's a good key guy. The Mets didn't sign him. So when the Mets didn't sign him, I'm thinking, okay, maybe the guy wants $10 million. Maybe that's why. Because the Mets, just so you know, the Mets paid Jose Quintana $13 million in 2023, $13 million in 2024, and the Brewers paid him $2 million in 2025. So that's ridiculous. They gave him an option, just so you know, there is a mutual option for 2026 for $15 million. So there is that, but still, they paid him $2 million for 2025. I thought Griffin Canning, he had a really good value deal for the Mets. He gave him $4 million. But Jose Quintana, again, that was a great deal. And it could have been a stabilizer. Again, I'm talking about a good stabilizing presence. That could have been a stabilizer, but the Mets decided to go in a different direction. They said, hey, we got plenty of young kids. We got plenty of arm, Tyler McGill's, Griffin Canning, Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea. We're 100% fine. They're not. Yeah, 2015. Yep, that was like the last year. Well, I mean, we signed Bartolo Colon around that time. I know Bartolo Colon, he was the veteran. I consider him the veteran presence in that iteration of our rotation. And that's what his role was. He was to be that big veteran presence, and Bartolo Colon fit that to perfection. Yeah, Stearns would have been a good GM when we had to deal with the Wilpons. Now we don't have to penny pinch. The only problem with that is there's only one problem. Stearns would never have taken that job. Would have never worked with the Wilpons for one reason. His contract that he makes, I believe it's $11 million. The Wilpons would have never, ever, ever, ever paid their president or their GM $11 million. That would have been the problem. I think Stearns would have said, hey, you pay me 11, I'll save you $100-something million. But that would have been the hurdle the Wilpons would have had. Too much money. And that would have been kind of short-sighted because, like you said, Stearns could have saved you a lot of money in payroll. But I do agree he would have been a good general manager for the Wilpons. They kind of seem to see eye to eye. And Crispy, you're right. I knew Manaea signing was a huge mistake. He had a career ERA of 4.06. Last year was an anomaly. He still had a 3.46 ERA. Good, not great. He is the definition of buying stock at an all-time high. I mean, that you're right. I mean, and the thing is, the last 2 months or last 3 months, he actually performed much better. So I think they looked at the trend, right? The trend was actually going upward as the season progressed. And then also they changed his mechanics from 3/4 to sidearm. So they were thinking he's Chris Sale 2.0. Oh, we got a great, potential buy here. And you're right. They bought at an all-time high, 3 years, $75 million. I mean, honestly, the guy's not even the Jose Quintana for $2 million gave you more value and production this year. I mean, think about that. More production from Jose Quintana at $2 million than you got $25 million out of Manaea. That is a huge failure for Mr. Stearns. And making it even bigger failure is the fact that now you have him for 2 years and $50 million. So they are heavily invested in this guy. They are heavily invested. So New York Mets, as much as I want them to kick Manaea, kick him in the behind, whatever you got to do, you have to make sure that whatever you do, you make him as production as he's got to be highly productive now, but he's also got to be highly productive in the future. I think they'd be handling this situation very differently if Sean Manaea was a free agent. And this is why, I say this is why you need veteran. This is why you need that veteran presence, and it can't all be rookies. Jose Quintana, May Peterson, and Manaea pitched good last year. I could believe that. You got a guy, I remember a couple years ago, and we all saw this. Remember when we got Chris Bassett? And Chris Bassett, in my opinion, he was that good, solid stabilizer, that good, solid veteran presence on the team. Very talented guy, very good in the clubhouse, very good with the other pitchers. That's when we had our consensus in 2022, when we had Bassett, Scherzer, DeGrom. After each start, those three guys would huddle. They'd, kind of like go over the game, go over the situation. I thought that was very good for the staff. They all challenged each other to do better, be better. We needed something like that. This year, for most of the year, I did not see that. I see the younger guys huddling up, the Nolan McLeans, the Jonah Tongs, Brandon Sproats. Obviously, they all feel comfortable. They know each other. They just came from the minors. But we need to establish that dynamic, and having like a successful, veteran guy. I don't think Peterson is the guy. And even if Peterson was the guy, Peterson's failing himself. Right. So it's hard for Peterson to say, hey, let me put my arm around Sproat. Let me put my arm around Tong. And, they look at the guy, he's got an 8 ERA over his last 8 starts. So success also makes you a better leader, in my opinion. Success also makes you a better leader. Oh, Jo, thank you for the nice words. Appreciate that. Okay, so I just checked out Fangraphs. And what I'm looking at is what odds do the Mets have to make the playoffs? So according to Fangraphs, and they look at different models, and they try to project what percentage chance do the Mets have. For example, Crispy, I think you said it. Technically, the Mets still have a 3-game lead on the Giants. Then they look at the remaining schedules left for the teams chasing the Mets. So according to most public models, the Mets still, and this, it is what it is. It can change every day. Still have a 75 to 80% chance of making the playoffs based on schedule, tiebreakers, and recent play. And then, the only other thing, I'm looking at my notes here. The thing is, the Mets, we hit 4 home runs today. 4 home runs today, right? The other 4 home runs, but we were 0 for 7 or 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Solo shots are nice, but it doesn't equal rallies. That's the problem. So today, again, we didn't put hits together. We really didn't. 0 for 5. I'm sorry, 0 for 5 runners in scoring position. So that's the only thing. Power without pressure. We got to put the pressure on the opposing pitcher. Today, we just really didn't do it. We really didn't do it. We had our moments. We had our solo shots. But again, that is not good enough. It's really not good enough. I also have here, I wanted to make note, Dom Hamill, debut. Congratulations. Had some nerves. But, he gave a nice, clean 6th inning. He gave a nice first impression. So congratulations in a very pressure-packed situation. Dom Hamill, great job. And today, again, to mention Soto, Alonso, Álvarez, Marte, all left the yard. Those guys look like, all of them. Álvarez, I like the fact that he went oppo. Marte hit a rope. Soto, all of these guys, like, they weren't cheap home runs. And you could tell, like, if you saw Soto after the game and they asked Soto about missing that shot, I mean, like, you could tell he was upset, right? I actually like that, when guys are upset after the game. And he said, it was a game of inches and I missed it by inches. So, he wants to win. I mean, in the worst way, Soto does want to help the Mets get to the playoffs. And then up to the Mendoza thing, they asked Mendoza, and it's so funny. This is actually like getting comical now. After every single starting pitcher start, this is just shows you how inconsistent the starters have been. This is like this question is there every single postgame press conference. So they ask Mendoza, is David Peterson getting another start? Mendoza laughed and said yes, but how bad he's been and how bad consistently the starters have been. That's like a traditional question in almost every single press conference, except for now Nolan McLaren. Although they did ask that after the first outing. I remember that. And I'm like, how the hell could you even ask a question like that? It goes without saying. He dominated in his first start. But also too, like, reporters these days, and I keep saying this, like, I get like 2 or 3 questions. I'm like, okay, great, that's a good question, good pushing question, good prodding question. I mean, a lot of these questions are like very complimentary. They're not very invasive, and I just still wish, especially in this situation, you have a $350 payroll. The pitchers have failed all year long. Again, what are we doing differently? What's the one thing that you could say has been the biggest reason why every single pitcher has been a failure? Your top 3 rotation. Why is every single pitcher? Why is Managa a failure? Why is Peterson a failure? Why is Senga a failure? It's not 1, it's not 2, it's 3. What is the one thing? I want them to ask those more direct, pressing questions. If they are, I am missing it. God. Yep, we got Jonah Tong tomorrow, capable of shutting down any offense. We need 4 runs. I mean, I think that's going to be big. I mean, that's going to be big, getting runs early and often, especially with a young guy on the mound. And last year was not last year. Last outing for Jonah was tough. The Mets got behind. I mean, obviously, they jumped all over him. Texas Rangers kind of jumped all over him. And he only lasted 2 outs. He only lasted 2 outs. I mean, I feel bad for the kid, but I have a lot of confidence like you do, Jo. I think, we're going to see a very determined kid. I think the Mets went to work. The Mets are going to work on a lot of these starting pitchers, trying to figure this out. So, let's see. I think we're going to see the best of him tomorrow. So I'm excited to see that. And then also, Jonah's got a nasty, nasty, nasty curveball. And, I want to see that curveball, but I also want to see him establish the fastball because, he was supposed to have one of the most elite fastballs in the whole minors, so everything else is going to be established off of that fastball. If you notice on the last start that he struggled with the against the Rangers, he was throwing most of his, I think 10 out of the first 14 pitches with changeups and off speed. But, if you don't establish the fastball, the changeup is not going to be as effective. So let's establish the fastball. I'm pretty sure they're going to, tell him to do that, establish the location, go up, down, hit the corners, and then you could work off of that with the nasty, the Vulcan changeup and the curve. And, I'm pretty sure they're going to work on a slide piece with him, a slider. I'm pretty, it's something that he's utilized in the past, but he hasn't really done it too often. Probably over the offseason, they're going to work with him on a slider, maybe a slurve. It's a little tougher when you have that, over the hand motion like Lincecum. But then again, Helsley has that over the top, and he has a nasty slider. So again, I have confidence in his stuff, but it's going to be establishing that fastball, establishing location, and then working off that. Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up. Tong had 3 walks against Texas, but he's been like Jonah's been very like his strikeout to walk ratio, if I remember correctly, for the minors is very ridiculously good. Okay, so like in the minors, in 113 innings, and this is what we haven't really seen yet. We haven't seen the dominating strikeout version of Jonah Tong. And I mean, he's always been a strikeout pitcher. In the minors this year, he had a 14.2 strikeout per 9 innings. I mean, very nasty. The whip was 0.92, so not many hits off of him. But more importantly, in those 113 innings, he had 179 Ks and 47 walks. So 179 Ks in 113 innings. So we've yet to see that version of Jonah Tong where he's, being that lights out, striking out hitters. this and that. So again, they're going to want him to, again, establish the fastball and then work the changeup and the off speed around that. But again, I'm excited. I think, again, we're going to be very, very pleased, and that's going to help him confidence-wise too. All right, so I basically went over everything I wanted to today. All right, folks. So I know, like, because of my job situation, like, I want to live stream a lot more, but sometimes you work like till 11, 12 at night, or I work till 11, 12, and then I'm tired and I got to rewatch the game. So it gets a little difficult, but I've worked it out now until the end of the season. I'm going to be live streaming every night. So if you didn't get a chance to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, set your alerts, hit the like button, because it really helps out the video. And I do appreciate that. So again, we're going to be talking about this every night. It's probably going to be late night sometimes, but again, this is very important. Now until the end of the season, this is the most important stretch. This is going to depend on what we do in the offseason. This is going to depend if we make the playoffs. We're going to get an opportunity to see some of our young gem pitchers. So that's good. We're going to see Pete Alonso. Who knows if he's going to be here next year? So let's enjoy these last couple games. We've got 10 games left. 10 games left. We still got magic moments to come. Last year, we had magic moments at the end of the year from Lindor, Pete Alonso, to name a few. So again, let's knock it down. We still got a 2-game lead in the loss column on everybody. So we have a lot of opportunity. So let's be positive. Let's see what happens. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Hopefully you all have a great night. It's 3:00 in the morning. Wanted to broadcast till then. But again, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a great night. We'll see everybody later today. Thank you again. Let's go Mets.